Alright, it's been a while. Let me make sure it doesn't like private again. View your channel. Hooray, it's actually there. Alright. It has been a while. I guess the last time I played was in December. And just a lot of stuff happened. I got really depressed. I got distracted by a different game. And I got very sick. Oh, there we go. And yeah. So wait, let me make sure. What is the streaming quality? So it's excellent. So let's see if it holds. If it keeps that up. Stream health. Stream is healthy. Okay. Alright. Yeah, so I got, I don't know. Just took a break from this. I kept meaning to get back to it. I want to finish, I want to finish pressing all of the buttons in this build before I move on to finishing the game. We got what? 10,000. So like we're halfway. Yeah. I'm just been in a really bad place. Had a lot of bad luck. A lot of stuff that just kind of didn't feel like streaming. Didn't feel like working on this game. But I just gotta lock in and finish it. Like there's too much crap. Not saying I'm making the best game ever here, but there's, I don't know, it's something and it's being made by a person. There's too much stuff that isn't being made by people. And you know, it's, I'm gonna fight the machine by myself, but one thing I can do is keep making stuff. And I can't do that if I'm just sitting around being depressed, so I'm going to make stuff. I'm gonna make stuff with my own hands and my own brain. Sometimes I'm gonna make stupid stuff that a computer wouldn't think to make. Anyway, enough being bitter. I want to talk about. Played Resident Evil 9. It was really good. It's I don't know, it got me thinking about Resident Evil a lot and got me watching a lot of like Resident Evil videos online. Something that surprises me is like I watched a lot of like Resident Evil ranking videos and like nobody likes Revelations 2. It's always one of the worst rated games, and that surprises me because it's one of my favorite Resident Evil games. For a lot of reasons, I could go into detail, but I think the short version is because it's the closest the series ever got to kind of recapturing Resident Evil 4, in my opinion. And that's mainly because I don't think any other Resident Evil games really even tried. Really tried to do the same thing that 4 did. Because, like, there's a lot of stuff that Resident Evil 4 did great. And a lot of people have kind of written a lot of words on what makes RE4 so great. But I think what a big part of it, I think what it all kind of comes down to, like in the big picture, is that it found a great blend of action and horror, which creates this great pacing where, you know, there are moments where you do feel like a powerful action hero, but then there are moments where you feel weak and overwhelmed, and I think that is kind of the key of action and horror, especially as it applies to Resident Evil, but also just kind of generally how it applies to games is that, you know, action is when you feel powerful, and horror is when you feel vulnerable. And so Resident Evil 4 kind of like it goes back and forth, where there are moments where you feel very powerful and there are moments where you feel very vulnerable, and it kind of it is so like most Resident Evil games kind of also play on this, but they do it in a sense that like you feel very vulnerable at the end of the game and you feel pretty powerful, or you feel very vulnerable at the beginning of the game and you feel pretty powerful at the end of the game, where you've like collected a bunch of weapons and you can like take on the big bosses and stuff. And that is a big appeal of Resident Evil, I think, versus other horror franchises, is that in Resident Evil, you're going to get a big enough gun to blow up the scary thing. But Resident Evil 4, I think, does this in a way that it is kind of constantly going back and forth between vulnerable and powerful. I mean, you think, like, just look at the opening, I don't know, hour or so of the game. Like, at the beginning of the game, before you even fight any enemies, you get some very spooky atmosphere. You get this cutscene of a guy watching you through a window. It's like very spooky. You feel kind of vulnerable. You're like, hey, I don't know what's gonna be around the corner. I don't know what to expect. And this is all kind of speaking like on a first playthrough, like a first blind playthrough experience. But yeah, so you kind of feel vulnerable, and then you like go into the building and you talk to the guy and you fight him. Like, he attacks you, so you fight back and realize, oh, the zombies in this game actually aren't like that much of a threat. I just shoot the guy in the head, and especially with the new controls versus like the old Resident Evil games, I can just shoot the guy in the head and then roundhouse kick him. So it's like, yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of. And you kind of have a sequence where you're going towards the village and you're taking out groups of like 2 or 3 villagers at a time, and you're like, yeah, this isn't so bad. I got this. And then you reach the village ambush, and you realize, oh, no, I'm not going to be fighting like 2 or 3 guys at a time for most of this game. There's like 20 guys or something. I don't know how many technically there are at a time, but it feels like you're surrounded, and they're coming at you from all sides, and like there's nowhere to run. And so that's kind of, it flips back to the vulnerability. And then especially like when the chainsaw guy shows up, it's like, oh, actually, maybe I don't totally have this. Maybe there's, this game is maybe this game isn't going to be a piece of cake like I thought it was, but based on the first few enemies. But then you get through that, and then you kind of have the bit of power again as you go through the next few areas and fight kind of smaller groups of enemies. But then the big cheese shows up and knocks you out and kidnaps you. So you feel vulnerable again, and that's, kind of how the game goes. It's like you have these moments of power and you have these moments of vulnerability. And that is how Resident Evil 4 decided to blend, like, the action and the horror. And, then the series just kind of didn't really do that again, because pretty much every game since Resident Evil 4 has gone further in either the horror direction or the action direction. Looking at the immediate next game, Resident Evil 5 just kind of took a big step in the horror, in the action direction. And that was kind of, I think where it stopped being a horror series. Like, Resident Evil 4 was definitely a big step in the action direction, but Resident Evil 5 just kind of completely, let's see, do I need to, this might be kind of loud. Resident Evil 5 just kind of like completely ditched the horror altogether. It just said, yeah, we're an action series now. This is a co-op action game with like a vaguely horror theme. Yeah. And like, Resident Evil 5 is still fun. And like, this isn't necessarily an indictment of the game itself, but it wasn't Resident Evil 4. It didn't capture that same horror action balance that made Resident Evil 4 such a masterpiece. And then we got, let's see, what was next? Was Revelations next? I think Revelations was next. And that weirdly kind of went in both directions, where the Jill parts kind of tried to take the Resident Evil 4 gameplay style and do a more classic Resident Evil horror game with that. And then the other half of the game, where you play as like other guys, like Chris, and there's a guy who's literally named Jackass. Like, those are just like run forward. Those are super actions. They're just run forward and shoot everything. You have plenty of ammo. What else? And then like next we got Resident Evil 6, which goes without saying. If Resident Evil 5 took a big step in the action direction, Resident Evil 6 took like an Olympic champion long jump in the action direction. Just mostly did not care about being a horror game by that point at all. And then next came Revelations 2, which I'll get back to. And then, we got kind of a series reboot with like 7, 2 remake, 3 remake, 8. Those all were definitely more on the classic horror side. I think 3 remake and 8 kind of took a couple steps back towards the action, but I would definitely put those all on the classic horror Resident Evil side. And then we got 4 again, which was, of all these games, the first one I mentioned that kind of struck the balance of the original 4 of action and horror. Which is like, that's interesting. And then finally we got Resident Evil 9 just this year. Like, last week? And that one was actually kind of like Revelations, where it has like 2 halves. It has the action half and it has the horror half. Like, so the horror half with Grace is far more horror than Resident Evil 4 was. And the action half with Leon is like far more action than Leon was in 4. Because like Grace never really gets very good guns except the Requiem, which has extremely limited ammo. Whereas like in classic horror, Resident Evil is like, you're gonna get the shotgun soon, you're gonna get the grenade launcher, and like Grace just never gets any of that. She never really feels powerful at all. And then Leon, like, he just starts with powerful guns, they get handed to him left and right. He never feels weak, he always feels extremely capable. So, like, Resident Evil 9, despite having Leon, also misses out on that same action horror balance as Resident Evil 4 had. But then we go back to Revelations 2, and that is like the only game that kind of that even tried to do the same action horror balance as Resident Evil 4. Because you have moments where you feel very vulnerable, but then you have moments where you feel like, oh hey, I've got the hang of this situation. I know how these enemies work. I have big guns. I can take the situation. But then they'll introduce like another like a new enemy or a new environment or a new obstacle or something that you're like, oh, I don't have a handle on this. and you feel vulnerable again. And that's, yeah, like, I don't know. I'm probably like talking in circles and not making a ton of sense, but that is how I see Revelations 2. Is like it has the similar action horror blend as, like, it has the same action gameplay of that, that was shared with, it was kind of started with 4 and then we got with 5 and then Revelations, and then 6 just did something completely different that was like tried to do too much. And I could talk about like how 6 is just a mess, and not even bring up the story or the fact that it's an action game, but just like its controls are bad. They just tried to do too much. But Revelations 2 kind of like winds it back and kind of is, I think, the most refined version of the kind of gameplay that was introduced in Resident Evil 4. Because it's like still that same general gameplay, but like you can move while aiming, and you can strafe, and you can, like, there's a dodge button, there's a grenade button, like Revelations 2 just kind of like nailed it. And then like I said, after that, the next few games kind of didn't do the same thing. And when we finally got back to that action style of gameplay, it was with 4 Remake, which I think completely changed things by adding the parry. And it's still great, but it's different. It's a different kind of combat system. The other thing is, like, in terms of the story, though, like, I think Revelations 2 was a breath of fresh air in that era, because the series had gotten so bogged down by this, like, I don't know, this awful political intrigue and corporate espionage that Capcom wasn't really good enough at writing to make interesting. And it was like also this whole G.I. Joe thing that I always hated, where it was like the BSAA. I just do not like that whole concept of we're going to have a bunch of badass soldiers who are specifically trained to fight bioweapons, zoom around the world, and do exactly that. Because it's, I don't know, I feel like the core of Resident Evil is a character who, finding themselves in a situation where they are in over their head. Even Resident Evil 4, Leon was a very well-trained Secret Service agent, and he has been through something like this before. Why is that not lined up exactly? Should be. Oh, it is, okay. But like, he wasn't expecting to get into that on that day. He wasn't expecting a whole outbreak. Have to fight a whole outbreak in a whole village. He was expecting to kind of like stop by and say, "Hey, have you seen the president's daughter?" And they'd be like, "No." And he'd be like, "Okay, thanks for your time. Here's my card. Let me know if you see or hear anything." And then he just winds up in this whole thing. And, you know, that is more interesting. Being as Leon and, like, finding yourself in the situation and slowly seeing it unravel and, like, how dangerous things get, and he's kind of struggling to survive. Even though he is this badass action hero. Whereas, like, Chris in Resident Evil 5 isn't really struggling to survive. He kind of intentionally, knowingly puts himself in this situation. Yeah, and then, like, Revelations is sort of similar. Like, Jill is sort of having a bit of a struggle. But she's still, like, this badass soldier who is specifically trained to fight bioweapons. And also all the other, like, soldiers are just kind of, like, even better equipped than Jill is. And then 6, again, we don't even really need to talk about it. It is this big, globe-trotting, stupid action movie. But then we get, like, Revelations 2, and I feel like it was a breath of fresh air in the era because it, like, isn't about the BSAA. Like, I think they come up. But, like, it's not about them. It's about, like, Claire gets kidnapped and she's on an island and she is struggling to survive with Moira. And you're kind of finding out with her what's going on and how dangerous things get. And then on the Barry half, like, I think he is a BSAA agent. So, like, he does go in, like, knowing there's probably some stuff going on here, but he's, like, he ignored commands to hold out and, like, win anyway, and he's kind of under-equipped, so he's also kind of on the survival side. Like, he doesn't know exactly what's going on, but he's like, I am going there to save my daughter if she's still there to be saved. So yeah, like, both halves are, like, very, like, personal stories about characters trying to survive and trying to save other people who can be saved. What else? I don't know. Like Revelations 2 is just kind of a very good mix of action and horror. It has interesting enemies. It like has good pacing where like you're moving forward. It's introduce like interesting new scenarios and enemies. It has like memorable set pieces, like creepy locations. I don't know. It's just a really, and then on top of all that, it has raid mode, which is just let's turn this awesome RE4 style combat into a looter shooter, and let's bring back a lot of like it was a very good reuse of assets. Let's reuse the characters and enemies and locations from previous games and just give this mode a lot of content. And to me, it's everyone else loves Mercenaries mode. I never really liked Mercenaries because it's just kind of like, I don't know, I've never been a score chasing type guy. And Mercenaries just gets really repetitive. Like the only thing to do is just go for a better score, I guess. I especially don't like it when it's, you know, like you can put 10 minutes into a run and then like miss out because of one mistake. I don't know. As Mercenaries has never been my jam. I just like raid mode was the kind of replayability that I want from Resident Evil. I do hope they add like one of those modes to Resident Evil 9 though. Like, I would definitely prefer raid mode, but I think that's unlikely. I don't think it's impossible though. I did find out that the director of Resident Evil 9 is the same as the director of 7? Is that all of them? Yeah, that's the whole room. Oh, that's the whole room, yeah. Is the same as the director of 7 and Revelations 1. So like he's done raid mode before. One second, let me... Oh, what is this? Oh, this is a game I'm making. It's called 1 Million Buttons. I'm just currently rambling about Resident Evil because no one was here. But the premise is that there are 1 million buttons, and one of the buttons is correct. So you just click buttons until you find the correct button. I have already found the correct button in this save. So this is my 9th stream of this save file. My goal here is just to click all of the buttons. There are actually only about 200,000 buttons in this build. Not all of the rooms look like this. This is just a weird area where I kind of used repetitive rooms to make it a bit confusing, but like a lot of rooms will have neat, you know, different designs, different patterns to keep things interesting. Yeah, so this is just, I am about 20% of the way done making the game, and I'm testing to make sure all of the buttons can be clicked, because I would not want to ship a game where someone, I don't know, like, can't win the game because a button can't be clicked because I messed up. So yeah, I'm just testing it where it is now. It's on Steam if you want to wishlist it. But also I am like making all of the rooms. I'm making them by hand. I'm placing all of these buttons myself. I'm not using any procedural generation or anything. This is a artisanal handcrafted game. It's also, I found, like, I don't know, weirdly relaxing. I've been in kind of a bad place lately, so I'm just clicking. Nope, there are no clues. Yeah, it's just every button just has a 1 in a million chance of being the right button. It's completely random every time you start a new game. And yeah, there are no clues. Like, one thing it does do is, like, you'll notice this blue screen doesn't have a green border. But when I go over here into this room, this one does. And that green border means that I have clicked every button in this room and I can move on. I mean, you can click the buttons with the mouse. You can also press E, like the E key on the keyboard. So you can use either finger to click. But I do, it is kind of an intentional design decision that I want every click to be intentional. Like, I could do it so where you just hold the button and swipe over, it'll click everything, but that, I don't know, isn't as interesting. Then I'm just making Power Wash Simulator. You also can, like, just click, like, when it's on the center. Like, if you're more of an FPS guy, I like to do this mode where I, like, click a button and it kind of disconnects the cursor from the center, and then you just click around. Yeah. I miss, I think what I found is that, like, originally it was supposed to be kind of a rage game, kind of inspired by, Bennett Foddy and Getting Over It and stuff like that. But I found that's not really what I wound up making, because, there is the goal of finding buttons, but finding the one button, but like, most people who play it just like clicking the buttons, so it's almost like a big fidget spinner, a big, like, fidget toy. And I feel like, adding a mode where you're not clicking the buttons, I don't know. I guess, like, my approach is just I'm making a weird thing. If other people want to play it, that's cool. I don't want to add a mode where swiping would click all the buttons, because I feel like that would make it a different game from the game that I want to make. And And I understand, why someone, I don't know. Sorry if I'm like rambling and kind of aimless. I'm a little bit tired and haven't really done this in a bit. My thoughts aren't really together. It also has this like kind of musical element. The sound should be good, but where like you can make the music go faster by clicking faster. Like the music kind of matches pace with your, how you're clicking. Clicking kind of slow here because I'm out of practice. I'm kind of like, I don't know, zoning out, forgetting to talk. Up here you can see how many buttons I've clicked and how long I've been playing, and then when it turns green, that was the situation like when I found the button. So I actually found the button pretty early, only 3 hours in, under 2,000 buttons. And I'm 16 hours in, 10,000 buttons, almost 11,000. Let's see if I can get to 11,000 tonight. Let's see, I've been streaming for 42 minutes. I kind of wanted to finish these weird rooms. Okay, here's my answer to that. Is that kind of the point of the game was kind of the absurdity of having to click 1 million buttons. And I think being able to automate the clicking of buttons would kind of detract from the absurdity. Oh, and also the other reason I'm streaming this is because when I tell people about the game or show it to people, they often ask me, like, have you played it yourself? Have you found the button yourself? So I wanted to have an actual, like proof that yes, I have played the game myself. I have clicked the buttons. I'm not asking anyone to do anything I didn't do. also at 11,000. I think. Oh, I did all of them. Okay. Yeah, this room, sure. I think I'll do this room and call it. This should put me over 11,000 probably. Tomorrow, I'll do the dance floor room and then the Moby Dick rooms. Oh, there we go. We hit 11,000. We're going to finish this room. I'm about to fall asleep. I'm like hypnotizing myself. There's one more wall. Almost done. step out here. The dense room. Alright, I think I'm gonna call it a day here. Wait, it's for 11,016, almost 17 hours. All right.